Jack, listen. All her body parts has been paid for. Ensure you take her to the location and butcher her. Remember, Chief Ajayi has already bought the liver. Mr. Bell has taken the breasts, and Mr. Kong has paid for the heart. Make sure you give her a clean slice, Jack. A clean one. No damage, or you'll pay for it with your own parts. Jack's eyes gleamed with dark understanding, the grim nature of the task clear between them. The chilling finality in Victor's voice left no room for doubt. As they spoke, somewhere in the distance, Chinonso was still unaware of the fate that awaited her. Her trust shattered, her life hanging by a thread.
This story is meant for every young girl or successful ladies who are driven by the desire, desperation for love. Companionship decides to turn to social media in hopes of finding marriage or romantic fulfillment. It serves as a cautionary tale, a stark warning about the dangers of blindly trusting people online, especially those who make promises of love and marriage. As you follow Chinonso's journey, remember this: not everyone you meet online has your best interest at heart. This story will show you the importance of caution, patience, and trust in yourself, reminding you that true love cannot be rushed, and that trusting strangers online can lead to dire consequences. Watch to the end and learn why some relationships are better left behind the screen. Chinonso sat at her desk in her office in Lagos, surrounded by stacks of paperwork. She had everything: a high-paying job, a beautiful apartment, and a social life filled with friends. But something was missing: love. The longing for a companion who would understand her, someone who could stand by her side as she navigated life's challenges, had become overwhelming. Her friends tried to set her up with eligible bachelors, but none seemed to live up to the promise of love she envisioned. Then one evening, after another stressful day at work, she decided to try her luck online. Late that night, after scrolling through profiles, she came across Victor. His profile was picture-perfect, handsome, successful, and articulate. His words were smooth, and the way he spoke made Chinonso feel like she was the center of his world. As their chats deepened, he seemed to understand her like no one else did. The flirty banter turned into long, late-night conversations about life, dreams, and the future. Chinonso began to feel a spark, a glimmer of hope that she had finally found the one. She was cautious, but his persistence and genuine-sounding affection made her heart flutter. She wanted to believe that this was real. Victor's messages filled Chinonso's phone every day, and with each text, she felt more connected to him. He painted a picture of their future, of the wedding they would have, the house they would build together, and the family they would create. He told her that he worked offshore, away from Nigeria, but that his love for her was stronger than the distance between them. There was a sense of longing in his messages that tugged at her heartstrings. It was as if he was willing to give up everything for her, despite the miles that separated them. As their relationship grew, so did the intimacy of their conversations. Victor shared stories of how his mother had fallen ill, how he was struggling to pay for her treatment, and how his finances were tight due to the heavy responsibilities of his job. Chinonso, driven by her love for him, found herself wanting to help. She was working at a prominent bank and had a steady income. Victor's pleas for help seemed genuine, and each time he asked for money, Chinonso sent it without hesitation. At first, it was small amounts, money for medication, food for his mother, but as time went on, the requests became more frequent and larger. She told herself it was just part of their journey together, a sacrifice she was willing to make for the man she loved. As weeks turned into months, Chinonso's trust in Victor grew stronger, but something was beginning to gnaw at her. She had not seen him in person yet, and though their phone calls were frequent, Victor's words seemed to slip through her fingers like sand. His excuses for why he couldn't video call, his stories about being stuck offshore or in a location without internet seemed less convincing with time. But Chinonso, blinded by her desperation to believe in love, overlooked these little inconsistencies. She wanted to believe, and so she did. Victor's increasingly elaborate stories about his work offshore and his mother's illness began to weigh on Chinonso's mind. She was giving more and more, and he was always there, comforting her, telling her that this was just a temporary struggle, and that once things settled, he would be back in Nigeria for good. Yet, despite the growing financial strain on her, she didn't question his motives. She kept sending money, kept believing the lies, because her dream of finally having the love and family she longed for was too important to let go of. She knew that if she could just help him through these tough times, their future together would be worth it. Chinonso's heart raced with excitement when Victor finally told her that he would be coming back to Nigeria. After months of communicating only through screens and phone calls, the thought of finally meeting him in person seemed like a dream come true. He promised they would meet in Port Harcourt, a city far from Lagos. Chinonso's excitement grew, believing that the man she loved was finally coming home. She booked her flight to Port Harcourt, her heart racing with anticipation. She even kept the trip a secret from her family, convinced that this would be the start of her happily ever after. On the flight to Port Harcourt, Chinonso's thoughts were consumed by the image of Victor. She imagined how he would look, how he would embrace her, and how their lives would change forever after this meeting. She had high hopes for their future together, imagining a beautiful wedding, a home, and the life they would build. But as she landed and made her way to the meeting place Victor had arranged, something in her gut told her something wasn't right. She dismissed the feeling, convinced that it was just nerves. Victor had promised her that everything would be perfect. She trusted him. She had to. Chinonso couldn't believe it. After months of chatting with Victor online, the day they finally met in person had arrived. He had asked her to meet him at a hotel in Port Harcourt, and she was both excited and nervous. As she walked into the elegant restaurant inside the hotel, her heart skipped a beat when she saw him. He was everything he had promised in their chats, charming, handsome, and full of warmth. They shared a delicious dinner, talking about everything, life, dreams, and the future they would soon have together. The evening was perfect, and for the first time in a long while, Chinonso felt a sense of peace. She was with the man she loved, and everything seemed to be falling into place. However, as the night wore on, Victor's behavior subtly shifted. While Chinonso was distracted, laughing at a joke he made, he slipped something into her drink. The action was so subtle, so masked by his charm, that Chinonso didn't think twice. She trusted him after all. He had been so kind and understanding. How could he possibly have ill intentions? Chinonso took a sip of the drink, feeling the warmth of the evening and the comfort of Victor's presence. As they continued to chat, her eyelids grew heavy, and soon enough, she dozed off, slipping into an unconscious state. The world around her blurred, and she fell into darkness. When Chinonso woke up, she was no longer in the restaurant. Her body was stiff, her mind groggy, and her heart pounded with fear. She was sitting on the cold floor of a small, empty room, the walls surrounding her without a single sound. The doors were locked, and the room was airtight, making it impossible for her to be heard, even if she screamed. Panic surged through her as she tried to move, but she couldn't. Her hands and feet were bound. She felt helpless, terrified and confused, not knowing what to do or how she had ended up here. Victor was in the room, sitting on a chair, watching her with a cold, calculating look. Gone was the charming man she had known, the man she had trusted. The person in front of her now was unrecognizable, his demeanor entirely different, void of any warmth. He looked at her tears without compassion, his eyes cold. "Transfer all the money in your account," he said, his voice devoid of emotion, like a demand rather than a request. Chinonso's heart shattered. The realization hit her like a tidal wave. She had been duped. She had met the wrong person on the internet. The man she had trusted, the man she had fallen for, was nothing but a fraud, a monster in disguise. "Why? Why are you doing this to me?" she cried, her voice trembling with disbelief. "What have I done to deserve this? I thought you loved me. I thought we were going to get married. I've given you everything. Everything." Tears flowed freely as the gravity of her mistake became painfully clear. Victor only laughed, the sound cold and mocking. "You're very stupid," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You just meet someone on the internet and you're already falling in love. You'll see what happens now." Chinonso sobbed uncontrollably, praying for her life, praying that someone would save her from this nightmare. She prayed to God, hoping for a miracle, her mind racing with regret and fear. She wished she had listened to the little voice inside her, the voice that had warned her about this man, the voice that told her to be cautious. But it was too late now. As she cried, she overheard a conversation coming from the room next door. It was Victor, speaking with his accomplices. They were making arrangements to sell her body parts. The conversation sent a chill down her spine, and she realized just how deep she was in this nightmare. Victor was telling the men to prepare for the night's operation. They were planning to move her to another location where they would butcher her for her organs, selling them to the highest bidder. The words hit her like a hammer. She was no longer just a victim of deception. She was a victim of an organ trafficking ring. Her whole body went numb as she listened, her hands clenched into fists, bound tightly by the ropes. She knew what they intended to do to her, and she couldn't just let it happen. She had to find a way out. With the last ounce of strength she had, Chinonso pretended to fall asleep, her breath shallow, trying to appear lifeless. The men left the room, leaving her alone for a brief moment. In that moment, she gathered her courage. She wasn't going to let them kill her. She wasn't going to let them sell her body parts. As the minutes passed, she knew it was now or never. They were going to move her to the place where she would meet her horrific fate, but Chinonso was determined to escape. And escape she did. Using every bit of wit and strength left in her, she managed to free herself from the ropes and flee into the night, running for her life. Her heart raced as she ran through the dark streets, not looking back until she reached the safety of a nearby village. There, she was able to get help, and the police were contacted immediately. Chinonso was saved, but her spirit was broken. She would never forget the betrayal, the lies, and the horror she had narrowly escaped. Her story was a warning, one that echoed the importance of trust, caution, and self-awareness. On the airplane, as she flew back to Lagos, she realized that love was never supposed to feel like a trap, and no one, no matter how charming, should ever make you feel small or manipulated. Through her ordeal, she had learned the hardest lesson of all. Some things, even love, could not be rushed.